Well, thank you for joining us on our post-council press conference that we have on the Thursday after the Common Council. We have Steve Barg, City Administrator, and our Mayor, Bob McManus, and the media joining us. And I will turn it right over to our City Administrator.
Thank you, Tom. It is good to be here. We did have 2 meetings, as it turned out, on Tuesday night instead of 1, 2 for the price of 1, as they say. The first meeting was at 5:30, and that was a joint meeting between the Council and the Marshfield Utilities Commission. It's our second annual. We had one back in April of 2019, so talked about some broad topics of interest to both parties. And then our regular meeting was backed up an hour to 7 p.m. to accommodate that special meeting. And right now we're going to dive into the details and the results of both meetings. Take it away.
So thank you, Steve. If I could, I'd start at the beginning of the Common Council meeting, the regular meeting from this past Tuesday, October 13th, excuse me. And, third on the agenda is public comments. After that, it was a response to concerns raised during public comments at a meeting in September. One kind of went into another. Mayor, I'll just ask you for your reaction up front to the number of people, public comments. It was a big crowd. I'd like to get your reaction to some of the comments you heard regarding the situation at the police department with the police chief. And then the city's response to that, and also some of the other things you heard throughout the meeting in terms of, I know there was some response from Fire and Police Commission member, and things of that nature. So just up front here, would like to get your response to the whole meeting, how it played out, what you heard, what the city's response is or was, and where we go to from here.
So that's a long question.
Thank you.
But a good one. A council meeting on this past Tuesday was at 7 o'clock, and I believe there was probably 20, maybe a little bit more of that, of citizens here. And there were 4 of them that gave public comment, and their concern is the information that they are getting, or lack thereof, that they are getting regarding the police chief. They were all, it's very clear. What's very clear is their frustration, not just the 4 folks that spoke, but the other people that were here that were in support of that. And so we listened to all of them. We listened to them intently. All council members were listening to what they were saying, and we really there's no problem with what they said. And so a little bit after that, the city administrator, Steve Barg, gave a response to some of the questions that they'd have. I'm sure he's going to go over that. And one of the police and fire commissioners, former Mayor Mike Myers, was here, and he gave his perspective as well. And so we are very keenly aware of the frustration going on 8 weeks now that we have this issue going on. We're very, very clearly aware of that. But this is the issue that we have as the elected officials. Number one, we don't have any information at all on what the inferences are, on what the complaints are, or anything. From that, myself as well as members of the Common Council, we don't. And the reasoning behind that, because there are some people that say, look, we're citizens, we pay the taxes, we pay everybody's salary, why can't we know? It's a very good question. And this is the answer that we've been given, not only from our well-respected city attorney, Hap Wolfgram, but also one of the attorneys involved in these investigations. They've advised us that it is best that we know nothing about it, because investigations have to stay clean, if you will, so that there's no rumors going out or there's no information leaking out or anything that could harm the case for either the person making the complaint or the person that has been complained about. And so we've been advised by our legal counsel, again, both Hap and the other attorney doing this, that it's best that we know nothing about it to keep the investigation clean, I guess. I don't know of a better word for that. And so this is the big thing. And the citizens are right. We've paid a lot of money for this. I mean, what we know of right now is we've paid over $40,000 for the current investigation that's taking place. That's a lot of money. And because of that is why myself and the Common Council members, and I'm not speaking for them, so we've spent so much money, so isn't it only prudent and doesn't it make sense that we then follow the advice of the people giving us that advice? Because if we would go out and do something different, we're not following our own legal advice. So I am, of the four people that spoke, you could see their agitation and their irritation. I can assure you, myself and the council members are equally as frustrated. And I'm sure that the people involved in this who have made a complaint, as well as the person that the complaint was made against, I'm sure they're frustrated as well. There's no easy way out of this. But we are going to follow the advice of the attorneys that we respect and pay for, because I will say this, it's a big number. And the amount of money that we've spent just to the one attorney firm, as I said, is over $40,000. That does not include the time of our city attorney. So it is expensive. And because it's expensive, I believe it is the right thing for us to do to follow that legal counsel.
I think the mayor said it very, very well. The only thing I would add is that, the phrases that come up, and I think he said one of them, the integrity of the investigation, and another one would be the protection and being able to do the best we can for not only the police chief, but all others who may be impacted in some way, shape, or form by what's being looked at. That's critical. We don't want to blow that. I mean, we talk about spending $40,000. We want to see this investigation wrapped up at the earliest possible time, but we want them to get it right. And we want to feel like what's been done is appropriate. There aren't loose ends, or there aren't things being, discussed or released in some way that are not accurate or not, appropriate or correct in some way. So it's hard. I came up to the podium twice that night. The first time really to address some concerns that had been brought up by Jim Hiller at a previous meeting. And as far as, the police chief, when he stepped aside, what happened then, and also the fact that he's still paid, even though he's been off duty for 2 months now. And I know that's hard for people to understand. When you hear someone is put on administrative leave, paid, you say, okay, well, this will be a couple weeks and we'll see what happens. And here we are at the 60-day mark. But it's really no different on day 61 than it was on day 1. The individual is out while this investigation is going on, and until it's completed and something happens from that, it's commonplace. I can't use another word than that. It's commonplace for these types of things for that individual to continue to receive their pay and benefits, even though it may seem counterintuitive to people. The second time I stepped up, it was merely to try and show some empathy for what people are feeling, because I get it. I'm a taxpayer. I hear things that are going on in the state and federal government, and I wonder why we don't know more about it, and it makes me mad. And I also wanted to give some relief, if you will, for the mayor, the council, and the Fire and Police Commission, and let people know that exactly what Bob said a minute ago. It's not like they're hiding information. They really don't have information, and they want, like all taxpayers, to see this addressed and resolved, whatever that means, at the earliest possible time. And I just felt it was important for people to hear that. Transparency is important. I think that was one of the 3 things the mayor brought up when we first met. Communicate with the public. Communicate, along with finances and some other things. And we try hard to do that. And Tom Laux and David Bennett do a great job of using our various media platforms to do that. But this is one of those times, personnel matter, confidential, a lot at stake. It's just one of those few times we can't be as transparent as we'd like to be.
So I heard terms like investigation and complaint. And I guess can you clarify, are we safe to assume that then, I don't know that, there was just one day in August, the police chief was just, suddenly on voluntary leave again. I don't know that a specific reason was ever really given. You can then clarify for us that it is indeed another investigation regarding the police chief?
You mean another as opposed to what happened back in July?
Correct.
Yes, this is separate. Assertions were made and they are being investigated, and the police chief agreed to voluntarily step aside while this took place, basically.
Okay. And so what is the reason for the investigation?
Well, I'm going to say not a lot because I can't say much. It's to investigate and make a determination of the validity or lack thereof of the concerns that are raised in this allegation. I mean, I really can't talk about the specifics of what type of concerns they are, but that is the premise, is that there's assertions have been made about improprieties. They're being looked at, and while this is going on, it's best for the chief not to be serving as our police chief at this point.
Okay, and there was a complaint from someone within the community?
I can't speak as to where the complaint came from.
Okay. And can you clarify, who is the law firm? Is there a law firm doing what, the actual investigation?
Yeah.
Or who's actually doing the investigation?
The city retained the law firm of Von Briesen, and they've done legal work for the city and other labor law matters. In fact, we use them for labor law issues. They've helped us sometimes with collective bargaining with the police and fire unions, those types of things. And so we did retain them. The council authorized us to enter a special agreement for this, for the services related to this matter.
Okay. And where are they from?
They have various offices. I think I'm wanting to say Madison or Milwaukee is home, but I don't know that for sure. I'll have to look that up.
Okay. Do you have any? So then there were items related to this issue, I think, on the closed session portion of the meeting, update on employment law issues involving police department and legal matters related to activities of the Fire and Police Commission. Can you just speak to those issues? Are they related to this issue regarding the chief? And what sort of action, if any, came out of the closed session portion of the meeting then?
Doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
Well, back on September 22nd, I mentioned that Jim Hiller had raised concerns about the lack of transparency regarding the status of the police chief. He also raised definitely some concerns about the 9/11 event that the police and fire departments did not actively participate in. There was an event at Columbia Park to honor, those who lost their lives in the 9/11 incident in the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, and also to thank and honor and recognize the dedicated professionals, police, fire, EMS, who serve every day to protect you, me, and everybody in this community. And those folks have been invited, those departments have been invited to participate in that event down at Columbia Park, and chose not to for a couple of reasons. But what Mr. Hiller had raised on September 22nd, and it was echoed by Councilmember Butke actually, is how that decision was made. Reference had been made to the fact that the police and fire chiefs were not comfortable being part of that for some various reasons. That it was also referenced that the Police and Fire Commission supported that decision. And so the question came about, how was that made? Was that made at a public meeting of the Fire and Police Commission? Was that made in some other way? And out of that, there's been some discussion involving the city attorney. And so we did put it in closed session to look at, whether any illegalities per se had transpired and, how to address them.
Okay. Either of you have any other comments on that issue as it moves forward in terms of, has there been any indication from Von Briesen or anybody else regarding timeline or, timetable, how this plays out, when the public can expect some sort of movement on this, or any new information on this, or anything of that nature?
There's really no new information. We have to wait for all of the parties involved to complete what they're doing. And until then, we have to sit and wait, and we have to be and we are just as frustrated, just as irritated as the public is over having to do this, but it's necessary. And I will go back to the thing of the public, being an elected official is different from a city employee in some aspects, and in some aspects, it's not. And the way that it's not is the public expects the elected officials and city officials and city employees to do the right thing and to do what's in the best interest of the people. I believe the members of the council, and I know Steve Barg believes, that in following the advice of the legal counsel, who we pay a lot of money to, that is the right thing to do. And in this one situation, that's where information just can't get out because we've been advised that that's not the right thing. And here's the thing, Mike, I can't even give you any information because I don't even know. I'm the mayor of the city. I don't even know what the issues are. So believe me, that's very frustrating. At the same time, I understand on a different point of view why that's important. And so although it frustrates me, I've got to do what's right and follow that legal advice.
And adding to that, I think some people, when they saw what happened back in July and how quickly that was resolved, in less than a week, it was announced that, in fact, there was nothing there that was going to be pursued. I think people thought, okay, great, that's the way these kind of things work. And now they're looking at 8 weeks and they're saying that was 1 week and this is 8 weeks. What's happening here? Where are we falling down? Not all matters are the same. And, I think you know this from legal issues you probably heard about in the news. They have different levels of investigation regarding, are there a lot of witnesses versus few witnesses and those kind of things. What I've tried to encourage, and I know Jennifer Rakew, our Human Resources Director, has tried to encourage as well, as we've talked with Von Briesen staff, is to the greatest ability possible, can you work to expedite it? Realizing that the most important thing is do your job, do it well, do it right. It's not like they're going to say, well, Steve, if you want this wrapped up quickly in Marshfield, we got more witnesses to talk to, but we'll just skip that. We'll just do our report now and see what it looks like. No, thoroughness, accuracy, and completeness is what we want. But we've let them know that there's unrest, that there is, some heartburn here over the length of time, wondering what's going to happen with our top law enforcement official and where all this thing goes. And but right now, I really can't say any particular timeline as to when we maybe getting some conclusion to what's going on.
I do just want to add to that too, because I've got, this is frustrating. I got to tell you, because I've got two hats, if you will. And we'll go back to the investigation that was done back in July. My hat as a resident of the city of Marshfield is, okay, this was done back in July. We still don't even have a report. What, are you kidding me? I mean, it's whatever, what is that, 8, 9? That's almost 3 months later, and we still don't have a report. So as a citizen of Marshfield, that's frustrating as all get out. My other hat is mayor. Now, I'm at the mercy of whoever it was that did the investigation to send a report. And so going back to just being a citizen, are you kidding me? 3 months just to send a report? And that's the situation that we're in. And this is why people in the community are so frustrated, is because this is just, it's lingering on and on. And I wanted to give both hats because I think it's important that the people see that everybody involved is just as important. Can we get some information? I mean, this one that we're currently involved in, okay, I kind of get it, but seriously, we can't even get a report from July? But we can't call the people that did that. Well, I know Steve has.
Yeah.
We have, but you can't make them send it. And I will tell you, the pressure, the real life, real world pressure that Steve is under is unfathomable, because he's got elected officials, myself, and I know council members saying, where is this stuff? Where is this stuff? Where is this stuff? And he's got to say, I'm asking for it. And yet he's got to make the other call to the other people saying, where is this stuff? He's caught in the middle. And he's caught in the middle on a lot of this stuff. And so it's just important that the citizens know that the elected officials, believe me, we hear you. We share your frustration. We really, really do. But we have to follow the advice we're given.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we have tried to get that report. I mean, it's frustrating because it's almost like there's this cloud hanging over everybody for something we've been told is done. And, you wonder where it's coming from. And we've asked, believe me, we made the request in writing, followed up, looking for, when is this going to be coming to our doorstep? That is frustrating. And thank you for what you said a minute ago, Bob. It is difficult for me. I mean, I do talk to our labor law counsel, as does Jennifer Akeu. And, but the fact of the matter is they remind us, I only know so much too. I don't know everything, but that even things that I might want to say, hey, can I tell the council this or that? The answer is generally no. I mean, they've cautioned very carefully that this is something that must be kept incredibly close to the vest for the integrity of the process. I'll say it one more time, and the protection and the fairness to all involved. And we're going to continue to do that. We just want to see resolution.
Another question regarding we got the report, I think it was in September, about, the legal costs keep rising. And I think one of the aldermen had asked for a report on that. And now the numbers, obviously keep going higher. I don't think you went into the budget process, last fall saying, oh, by the way, let's not forget to earmark those thousands of dollars for those investigations we're going to have in 2020. I don't think you saw this coming, obviously. So then my question is, from a budgetary standpoint, is there a fund or something where you just have sort of contingencies built in for this type of a situation now, where we're spending all this money on added legal costs when we did not anticipate them? I don't know, it's probably a question for Steve. Can you kind of tackle that from a budget standpoint? Where's all the money coming from?
Sure, Mike. We generally have a contingency account for things that come up during the year. Let's say Dan Connect says, look, there's a piece of equipment that failed. We didn't budget for it. Can we transfer $10,000 from contingency to replace it or whatever? It's not meant for, very large bills. And this is very unexpected. We budget a certain amount of money each year for legal expenses, but we've blown through that. I mean, I'll just say that out loud. We've way blown through that with some of these costs. So it really does it gets covered ultimately through general fund reserves. I mean, I don't do the accounting journal entries. And, the hope as we go through the year, we've been looking at our budget. Ron Allman, our finance director, was talking to me about it earlier today. So far, expenses versus revenue in the 2020 budget is looking, quite favorable. You never know what'll happen in November, December. We could get hit with big snowstorms. And I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but every snowstorm we have to deal with brings an enormous cost, overtime and equipment cost and so forth, if we have to haul snow or have somebody else haul snow for us out of the downtown. But right now we're doing pretty well, but there's no way to say it in sugarcoating. It is hurting to see these bills coming down that weren't planned for. And we, it's one of those things we want to mitigate them to the greatest degree possible, but they have to be paid, and we have to take the money from our general fund if need be.
Is the contingency, is that set at a certain amount in the budget process, or is that just sort of a floating number? No,
it's a set process. Usually we've tried to maintain a contingency up around $100,000, which for a $22.5 million general fund, it's not really that much. We reduced it this year because we weren't sure how much of the non-governmental agencies were going to get funding. And then we took that money largely out of that contingency. So giving money for job service, for civic band, or those kind of things came out of that. But I think we actually started the year with only like $50-some thousand, but we haven't even spent, I don't think we've even spent any contingency money this year from that fund. We may still at the end of the year because of unknowns that come up in the final quarter. But, Ron's perspective, and I think mine as well, too, is, unless something's an emergency, can it wait till next year? Can we get through till next year somehow with unplanned expenses? But legal firms don't care. They want to get paid. And so that one has to go forward.
Okay, there was another agenda item on the closed session portion of the agenda. Update on litigation involving Tri-Media LLC. That's the city's former cable access coordinator. Any comments on whether there was any movement on that closed session item after the Tuesday meeting?
No, really, this is, you've probably seen this item on our agenda a few times, and you'll likely see it a few more. And I don't say that, flippantly. It's an ongoing process, and, just, we get updates from the city attorney. He'll say, here's what's going on right now. You need to know. Have any questions? Maybe there's a strategy issue to talk about, but there's nothing that we can release at this time.
Anything on, there was also one possible assistance for a proposed development project. Any details on that?
We actually postponed that one to another day because of all the things that we were facing in closed session. I talked to the Development Services Director, Josh Miller, as the closed session was about to start, told him about the time expected to cover these other issues, and kind of agreed maybe October 27th would be a better day to get, the council more attentive. It really didn't help that we started at 7 p.m. Think about this. We normally start our meetings at 6 now, and we normally have very little public comment. So we began that meeting kind of behind the 8 ball to begin with. In fact, Tom Laux, our communications director, was going to make his presentation on the proposed communication plan. And he agreed that maybe the next meeting would be better to get the full attention and the participation of the council to discuss it.
Well, as if 2020 couldn't get any weirder, another big agenda item from Tuesday was, believe it or not, trick-or-treating. And Mayor, maybe just comment on, it was really a follow-up discussion from, I think, September, when the council said, nope, we're not going to get involved. We're not going to do anything. It's not our place to, step in. And then I guess they did have the discussion and ultimately a vote on, changing the time for the official hours. Maybe just recap the discussion. And if you're, you're comfortable moving forward with what the council has done, and the fact that, again, here we are in 2020, all things considered, now having to have a council, a discussion at council level and an actual vote about trick-or-treating of all things.
Yeah, it was very interesting because, as you said, we had this meeting back in September, and back in September when we had it, of course, the amount of new infections on a daily basis was far lower than what it has been over, say, the last 2 weeks. And that caused a growing concern for, for safety and whatnot. And so don't really think that a municipality has the ability to call off Halloween or Thanksgiving or, you just don't have that. But the municipality, I believe it is our responsibility to make sure that to give out all of the possible safety procedures that you can do. So if you are going to go out, make sure you're socially distant. Of course, you'll already be wearing your mask. Be safe. And if you don't want to pass out candy because you don't want people coming to your door, just keep the door closed, turn the light out. But I do believe we went to 3 hours, and it's so that maybe there won't be so much congestion if maybe kids can get out a little bit earlier. And that's really the essence of it. And it's, to be honest with you, when we discussed it in September, I thought at that point everything was fine. We wouldn't be discussing it again. But to the credit of the council, I believe it was Ed Wagner that wanted to revisit it, and certainly all of the council members. It was a very good discussion, but it came out that if you're going to go out, you just need to be safe. So as a city, we'll be putting out some, recommendations from the CDC and from Wood County on if you are going to do it. Just be careful.
Yeah, I would add that it's an interesting discussion. It sort of mirrors the conversation you're hearing across the country right now. The idea of protecting health and safety versus, giving people some freedom to make their own choices. And you talk about someone dressing up their child and they've been looking forward to it all year, and they want to go to a few houses and get candy, at doors by saying trick or treat. I mean, you have to balance out people's health and the whole COVID-19 world with, some people want to do that and they feel it's an infringement upon their rights to be told that that's not going to happen. So I had done a survey of some of our neighboring communities, and they were all over the place. I believe Spencer decided to move their time up, and I think they did that mainly just to get away from darkness. And that's one of the things that'll come up from our change. We're going, instead of 5:30 to 7:30, we're going 4 to 7. So there'll be a good chunk of time there where it'll still be daylight, which is probably, good for kids crossing streets and so forth. But there's a couple of cities, Stevens Point and the village of Plover have decided to have trick-or-treat as normal, but actively discourage people from participating. And I'm not saying that to make light of them at all. That's an interesting thought that you go ahead and have it, but as a municipality, you strongly suggest to people that they not do it. So I think every community's been trying to find their resting place. And I think where we are right now, extending it to 3 hours to kind of minimize the crowd at any one time, and putting out good safety tips that Tom will help us get out on our various media platforms is probably the best place to land at this point.
All right. Also, there was a request to authorize granting a mortgage for American Legion project. Can you summarize what that one was about and why it came to council?
Yeah, the American Legion at 2100 South Maple, they want to do an installation and roofing project for that building, and it's going to cost about $65,000. So they were looking for collateral to secure a loan for at least some of that money. And it's a weird thing. I didn't know this. When I first was informed, I thought, well, how does that involve the city? Well, we don't own the building, but we do own the land, and we have a 99-year lease with the American Legion. So the thought was, well, what's the value of the land? And I was surprised when we looked it up. It was over $200,000, for that 1+ acre, I guess. Anyway, the thought was, well, could we provide collateral through a mortgage or other means to allow them to get this loan so that they could do the project? They've already raised, I think, nearly half. They're getting close to half of the money out of that $65,000 from themselves, internally through their own programs to get donations and so forth. So really, they're only looking at the end for maybe $35,000 or $40,000. But it seems like a good deal. The city attorney said as long as the value of what we're giving in collateral is less than the value of the land, we're pretty secure. And I think the mayor would agree as well. The American Legion does some great stuff for the community. What really makes Marshfield special, and I know that other communities have this too, but are our civic groups, they're nonprofits, they're the VFW and American Legion, all these people that do things that would never happen were it not for their charity, their goodwill, their desire to make the place a better community. And the American Legion is certainly one of those entities. They do great stuff for the city, and we're happy to support them in something like this. It really doesn't cost us anything, truthfully.
All right, there was before the regular council meeting, there was a special meeting, a joint meeting of the Marshfield Common Council and the Marshfield Utilities Commission. Mayor, you want to make some comments on that meeting? I know this is something that's done, I don't know if it's annually or twice a year or what, but I know it's been done before. Maybe just talk about that meeting and, what were some of the reasons behind it and some of the things you heard during, throughout the discussion, maybe some of the goals that you had maybe going into that meeting.
Well, it was a very good discussion. I mean, the Utility Commission has 5 commissioners that they're all citizens of the city, as well as Nick was there, the general manager, and it was very good. We do try to get together with them. I think we got together a little bit over a year ago, maybe a year and a half, and then we were going to meet sooner, but COVID kicked in, so this meeting got kicked back a little bit. But some of the topics we went through, they gave us a lead service update. They also talked about some two-way communication because there was some frustrations between maybe what some of their commissioner members heard and members of the council. And so we talked about how we can do that better. Mike Ebro, the president of the commission, brought up these are the things that we're currently doing. They send a newsletter and everything else, but how can we increase our communication? A little bit on the economic development, and then they talked a lot about the building, the new facility that they are going to do. And this, the council had a lot of questions about that because it's, you know, it's a new building. A new facility is needed. They are just not adequate. They do not have enough room. But is now with the pandemic going on and everything, is this really the right time? And you balance that, and that was a reasonable conversation to have. Some of the concerns that some of the aldermen have. But when you look at the historic low interest rates that are there, if you wait to do this and the interest rate goes from 1.5 to 3.5, anything that you saved on waiting is gone in that. So that's a realistic thing. So we talked about that, and then there was a bit of a pool update as well. Overall, I thought it was a very, very good discussion. I mean, there is work that needs to be done with the communication between the council and the utility. And I think that's going to get better and better. I think one thing that would happen is helpful is if during a council meeting, there's an area, there's a time there right after mayor's comments, then there's council comments, and then there's also comments from boards, committees, and commissions. I think it would still, and I've asked this a lot, of maybe the council members that are on these boards and commissions to give an update to other council members on maybe what is going on or what the discussion is. But one thing to note for the aldermen is, you know, they have two committees that they have to be on, and actually one that they actually have to be on. And then many of them have 3, 4, or even 5 different committees or boards that they sit on as well. So it really is a big time commitment. And so it would be good if we can get some of that information. I myself can't go to every one, but certainly I watch them on our local cable access. And so watch those to get them. And every now and then I'll stop into one of the other meetings. I stopped in a couple of weeks ago at a historic preservation committee, and it was amazing what was going on there. And you just see all these citizens, they're not paid. They're here because they love the city. And what was going on, it was actually very exciting. So we're actually going to work on better communication through the utility. So overall, it's a very good meeting.
Yeah, I would just add to the discussion about the building. I mean, you know, I'm glad that the two bodies got together. Sometimes sitting in my office, I get to hear, you know, both sides kind of independently, and then you realize that there's not maybe a lot of conversation going on between them. And earlier this year, the Utilities Commission came to the council looking for their blessing to expend monies, a fair amount of monies, on design, engineering, architectural work for this project. And the council gave its approval. At that time, they saw some information about what the building will look like, heard about the need for it, and had a little bit of Q&A on that. And so, you know, in the commission's mind, you know, they're on their way, and the only thing left that the city actually has to do is to approve the borrowing. You know, it requires council approval because really the utility is part of the city. We talk about Marshfield Utilities as a separate entity, but they're not a separate legal entity. They operate under the umbrella of the city proper. So they're working along, doing a great job, getting everything set. And their plans are to be opening bids, I believe, in December, and then coming to the city in January to ask for the borrowing to go forward, assuming that the bids come in near the projected total, which I think is around $18 million. Well, on the council end, you know, they're sensing that there's some financial hurt in the community. People have been furloughed, or they've, you know, lost their jobs, or whatever. Businesses had to shut down. And so they're maybe a little bit more conscious of that number. You know, that it's an expensive building, even if it's needed, as I think we've all agreed. And so that conversation was good to have. I think that, you know, hopefully all gets worked out. One of the things that Councilmember Butke brought up is, you know, could you take one more look at whether or not it's possible to reduce the size and scope of the building a little bit to save a couple $1 million? It might be a way of showing the citizens that we are, you know, conscious of the cost. Now, one of the interesting things is that ratepayers and taxpayers are not exactly the same thing. Marshfield Utilities service is an area bigger than the city. So there's people who get electric service outside of the city limits of Marshfield that are not paying taxes to the city, but, they overlap obviously considerably. And so I think, I don't know what will happen on the utilities end, if there's anything they can do to take another look at it. But I applaud Marshfield Utilities. They've really done a lot of work. This has been going on for a number of years to get ready for this moment. And I think they've done their homework. And I'm certainly hopeful that things will get approved under some way, shape, or form. Maybe some modifications made. But I know that there's council members who have concerns about a project of this size right now, and wonder if it's the right time, as the mayor said. So good conversation, and it helps people, I think, get mentally ready for what will come up in about 90 days or so when this comes to the council for approval of the borrowing.
Those were all the questions I had. Did either of you have anything else you wanted to add from either of the two meetings on Tuesday?
I'll just mention one thing real quick that was on the agenda, and that's a discussion of a possible tourism commission. Really, all that's about is, we've got a great relationship with Visit Marshfield. They used to be called the CVB, Convention and Visitors Bureau. And we're in the last year now of a 5-year contract with them. They've been our designated tourism entity. And there are other communities who have what's called a tourism commission. So instead of the council trying to do oversight of these room tax monies and the appropriation and allocation of them, they've created a separate commission, like we have the separate utilities commission and the fire and police commission, that deals with that. They deal with the monies that come in from room tax and the allocation of those, and oversee and make sure everything's going well and getting accountability where that's needed. So I talked about it. I talked a little bit about the cities that are doing that. Matt McLean and Al Cheney were here to say, well, look, just so you know, we have a board now that provides good oversight and accountability. This might be duplication, and we do a lot of great stuff. We'd love to tell you more about what we do on a monthly and annual basis to make this a place that's vibrant with tourism and activity. And we'd love to meet with you again if you'd be willing to. So it really was just kind of the start of a process. It's even been discussed that maybe we'll do maybe a 2-year extension with the Visit Marshfield entity, if you will, while we decide whether the Tourism Commission is a good model or a bad model. Does it have merit or does it really not have merit here in this city? So it was a good opening discussion, and I think you'll hear more about that in the months ahead. That's all I really have.
I just have a couple of updates. I just want to remind the public that they'll be voting here at City Hall, I believe, starting next Tuesday from 8 to 5:30, and that'll go for approximately 2 weeks. They'll also be voting on Saturday the 24th and the following Saturday as well, I believe, from 8 to noon, and they could come here and people can vote in person. Of course, when they come, we are going to ask that they are wearing masks and socially distanced and whatnot. And for those folks that received ballots by mail, out in front of City Hall, there's a drop box there. And it is great. It's very secure. Many people have utilized it. So if you did receive a ballot by mail and you don't want to risk it going in the mail, you can certainly come and do that. And I will say this, Deb Hall, our city clerk, has done an amazing job with 5 elections in 1 year. Probably double or triple the mail out volume and whatnot. She has made sure that on election day, all voting districts will be open and they will be safe. When people come, we are going to ask that everyone wear a mask, socially distance. There'll be hand sanitizer everywhere. And then finally, I would like to say there's an error out in not just the city of Marshfield, but everywhere. There's some frustration there with the investigations and whatnot that we've talked about, everything going on in national politics, that everything that we're dealing with COVID and the numbers. And there's just an air of frustration that is out there. And I'm just going to ask for us to be calm through all of this. Marshfield is a great place to live. And one thing I really want the citizens of Marshfield to know is the city is running very smooth. Our street departments, all of our staff at City Hall, public safety and the fire department and the police department, everything is running very smooth. So even though we go to the headline or the topic of the day and we talk about this one thing, That is one piece of the pie, but the majority of the pie is running very smooth. And I will just say, as we start to go into, the winter months, which I've heard that all the weather reports you're going to do are not going to include snow. I just hope that people remember that through all of this, Marshfield is still a wonderful place to live. And even in my role as mayor, I still go out to festival and everything else. And I will tell you, every now and then I will hear about some of the frustrations that we've talked about. But I will tell you what, the majority of the people are very happy. And of course, they're concerned because of the issue. And my wife, who is the most diligent person that I know, she gets up at 5:30 in the morning. She goes on her walk. And what I love about it is Marshfield's a safe place. You can do that. So with all our issues going on, it's still a wonderful place to live.
Let me add one more thing on the voting. Deb Hall, our city clerk, does a wonderful job, and thanks for noting that, Mayor. I appreciate that a lot. And Jessica, her deputy city clerk, is outstanding. The entire staff is great. But as we go through this, we are in a COVID environment, and we are in a very hotly contested presidential election. And as a result, the absentee balloting is high. The turnout is expected to be high. So if you do encounter any delays in terms of communication, someone getting back to you, I don't think you will, but if you do, please have patience. They are really being overwhelmed at this point by the whole election process. It's really, and they're including staff who don't normally work on elections to help people from other departments, and it's still hard to keep up. So just give a little bit of patience as we go through, but we'll do a good job.
Alrighty, well, thank you for joining us on our post-council press conference with our city administrator, Steve Barg, and our mayor, Bob McManus, as well as the press. And we will see you back on Thursday regarding this from our council meeting on the 27th. Thanks again.